So everybody make sure you are, I know people log in, but make sure you're actually here, present physically and mentally in class, because you are going to have to meet your groups at the end of class. And if you are MIA for that part, then that's going to affect your grade. So you don't want to just kind of be the one who is totally out of action and your group's not going to know who you are, and then you'll get a 0. So don't do that. So the midterm is due tonight. I think, I don't know, half of you have taken it, some amount. Make sure that you finish it by midnight. You have 30 minutes to take the actual quiz. It is a little tricky just from seeing how people have been doing on it. That was intentional to make sure that I'm really stamping these sorts of misconceptions and ideas that you might have had with React and JavaScript. So that's okay if you didn't do that well on it. But the main goal I have here is that you're learning from the things you're getting wrong and you actually understand what questions you got wrong and why. So we can talk about it next class once it's all due and talk about some of those things. It is one attempt though only. But don't worry. In general, I'm going to curve the grade based on how everybody does, and it sounds like it'll be needed. The main goal though is understand what you got wrong. You haven't missed anything yet, Mike. You are good to go right now. We're just going to be talking about design, and then the last 30 minutes you'll talk to your group. So project 2 grades, TAs did a great job kind of grading this fast. I'm going to finalize them this week, and you should have your grades out by this Friday. And then project 3 has begun now. So hopefully you saw your groups on Canvas. If not, you'll have a chance to do that. I also have assigned your group the industry mentor, and you're going to be reaching out to them. For meeting up with them, you're going to do it as a group, Elvis. And we're going to talk about how to just arrange the timing and all of that at the end of class. And then the other thing on your radar should be that this Sunday night, your group proposal is due. So this is like the 2-page proposal. I have the template up in the specs, and I've posted those links on Canvas as well. So you'll start working on that next class, probably more rather than this class. And you have to turn it in by Sunday night. Okay. Any other questions with project 3 stuff? Midterm stuff? Cool. Recap from homework 18. So that was just where you were writing the user stories. For those, I think overall, it was good to see the kinds of ideas you guys were coming up with, seeing some creativity, some potentially fun ideas there. Obviously, you're gonna have to talk it out with your group to figure out which ideas you wanna go with, and maybe it's not even the one that you wrote there. But in general, when you're writing your user stories, which you're gonna have to do in your proposal, make sure that you're following the format. So you wanna follow this format where you're including the user type, the action, and the goal. Oftentimes I would see people were forgetting the goal. So maybe they would say like, as a user, I can log in or something, or I can search for restaurants. Well, make sure that you are including the goal from the user's perspective. Why do they want to log in? Or why do they want to search for restaurants? So you would say, I can do blank in order to do blank. And that'll have a full user story in terms of all the key components. The other common kind of issue I would see is that a lot of people were including multiple actions inside of a given user story. So what could actually be written as 4 separate user stories was being combined into one. And you don't want to do that. So you want to be as kind of break it down to as specific and simple of an action as possible. An example is you don't want to say like, I can log in and then I can also like search restaurants and then I can also book a restaurant order at one place. These are like 3 separate actions. So you are logging in order to access your account info. You're searching for restaurants to see all the options in your area. you're booking one in order to like actually nail one down and, create a reservation. So these are all different actions. Make sure that you're breaking down your user stories into one action per story. Yeah, Peter, you can DM me. Okay, so just something you want to remember. This is going to make one, coming up with enough stories easy, because you might notice that coming up with like 5 or 8 is too hard. Well, that's probably because you haven't split them up down enough. The other thing is just make sure to get full credit, you're using the correct format. Okay. So we're going to talk about visual specifications today. This is basically what a designer often does in like a tech company or like a team, and thinking about like the kind of process that they go through. One question though to ask you first is why do we care about this material? So this is a software engineering class. I'm not training you guys how to become designers, but why do you think, given that it's still important to learn this material? Yeah, people don't want to use ugly software. So having a design sense is important, even as an engineer, because you don't want to be coding up some crappy app if people aren't going to use it then. UX design, they can make or break. Yeah, totally, Gerard. And you attract more users. So again, if you're just thinking about the product and like as an engineer, you want to make a good product, then you definitely want to have design thinking, so that you're going to make something that people will use. Elijah's saying to see if the design's feasible for an engineer. So as an engineer, maybe you're not creating the designs, but you're still using them and you're a part of that process. So you as the engineer, maybe you need to see if something's feasible and give feedback to the designer. You generally just want to understand about how this process works and like what kinds of information they're giving you so that you can basically test, is this something good or not? And yeah, exactly, Elvis. So it's a guideline for how things are going to look, and that's going to be what you use as an engineer when you're coding something up. This is going to be like your plan for visuals. And the design does represent, yeah, what your work's going to look like in the end. Yeah, so generally, like I'm saying, it's good to have a good idea of the process, even if you don't directly engage in it. And also just for like this course, you are gonna do this yourself. So you as a group will need to create mock-up designs for your project in order for us to see like where you're going with something. So this is a skill even in general that you could use, and also in this course, you are going to have to use for your project proposal. Are there any people here who've considered being designers, or you think you might be interested in going down that path? I personally, I actually enjoy that side of things. I do stuff more on the front end with like UI and JavaScript. So I also kind of interact with design and work with the designer to make them, but a lot of people prefer the code or like data, more backend stuff. So it really depends. Gerard, you thought about it? Okay. I remember you were saying you took another class, right? With user stories and all. Okay, Jamie has a background, graphic design, typography. Kadim's yeah. Joseph's not good at it. Yeah, that's fair. It's just another kind of technical role to be aware of alongside engineers. As an engineer, you do have the skills in terms of you have a good idea and a good sense of what's feasible and what's not, which can make you a good designer. So the rest of the skills you can really pick up with just like learning extra things, but you have engineering skills which actually can be valuable for a designer role. Okay, yeah, Matthew, not too productive with CSS. Good thing there's libraries that help you with that. But yeah, it's just something to kind of know about, know that it's a role that exists, whether you like it or not. Yeah. Yeah, it can be really cool to like kind of make the app look attractive, like in the end, and see that work done. You also kind of get the say in like how something's going to look that maybe an engineer wouldn't in many cases. So a lot of times an engineer simply consumes a design that the designer makes and just like implements it in their code, which is fun in itself. But maybe you want more say in like how it's going to end up looking. Yeah, CSS is wild. There's a lot, especially when you're trying to like lay things out, position them, can be really painful. But yeah, again, a lot of times at companies, you're going to see they use libraries or components that are kind of handling a lot of this for you and abstracting it out. So kind of like building blocks where you could just render these components that have design already added to them. Okay, so the purpose of design or these sorts of visual specifications, when we're only dealing with user stories, then they're great in terms of telling us like what sorts of features and what kinds of actions users can do with our app. But they obviously are not telling us much about how certain things look, the importance of different interactions and flows and things like that. So user stories are good. They're satisfying one need in terms of helping us focus in on like what we want the user to do if we implement something successfully. We had acceptance criteria, if you remember from last class. So these were like within a given user story, these sub bullets, which are saying what are all the steps you would need to take in order to successfully know, kind of test that we've completed the story. So is there a button that allows you to create a document? Does clicking on that button take you to a new document? Things like that. Those acceptance criteria, they were giving you a bit of the how aspect, like how is this feature going to really look in your application? But you can still go a step further, and that's where visual specs come in. So visual specs can tell you a lot more about like where do things appear, what part of the screen, how does the screen change on interaction? So like in tic-tac-toe, if you click hide leaderboard, how does the leaderboard go? Like what will it look like without the leaderboard? And what will the page look like with the leaderboard? That could be like an interaction. So there's different things that you really don't want to write out in plain English because it's going to get really painful after a point and wordy and not that intuitive to understand what something will look like. And that's why we kind of diagram it out in a mock. And the easiest way to do that, well, we're going to make some pictures just because this is a visual thing. So we want to draw something out in order to mimic what our app's going to look like in the end. That's kind of the best way to model it. And the easiest way to draw something out is simply just pen and paper. So usually you'll see that the first step that a designer kind of goes through when they're planning out how the app's going to look is sketching things out with pen and paper, super basic. The main reason it's useful, and you can kind of assume this or like understand this already, is you know the tools, you know how to draw, hopefully. You don't need to draw well, but you know how to draw. And you can also kind of make changes really easily. So you could, maybe I want to go a different path. I don't like this approach. You can simply erase something or start a new page, scribble something out and go that way. So it's just easy to make changes and it's a very lightweight way of designing. To make good sketches, kind of this first part of visual specs, you want to kind of focus more on the features and the interactions and less about kind of the exact pixel. So like the exact kind of layout, like how much space each thing is taking relative to each other. Let's say like colors, rounding borders, things like that as well. You don't want to get that detailed. So we're talking a little bit bigger picture in these sketches, just about where things are in a general sense, not exact sense, and kind of what they do, basically. So in your sketches, you're only going to want to show like the major elements on the page, maybe not like the small help button at the very bottom of the page. Maybe it's not important enough. You just include the major things and have like basic shapes. So you don't need to get that deep into how your tic-tac-toe board is going to look. You could just show a bunch of a simple grid or rectangles or something. And then your text. So you don't need to put text for like every single thing, every single link and every single button text that's going to show up on your app design. The text you show should mainly be for like major interactions. So like headings, I guess buttons, most buttons are major interactions. You don't need to put like very specific text, and I'll show you what that looks like. And then these sketches can also kind of be used for multiple user stories. So on the same sketch, you can show where you can click to do tic-tac-toe or also click to see the leaderboard, and they're going to be talking about two different stories. And again, the good thing about sketching is nothing is final. Even as ideas change, your designs can change, and it's really easy to kind of try and test things out. So here's kind of a few examples of what sketches can look like. These are a little bit in depth. Maybe yours are simpler than this even, but there's like kind of the overall page, the view. Let's say like you have your address bar here, Xing out, things like that. Then you might have like your main header text with some like links that you can click. And then just kind of the layout. So here are like your main components or widgets that you're gonna have in this app without going into too much detail. So there's a get help section here. We're not writing out the actual help writing. We're just kind of scribbling to say there's going to be some text here related to help. Similarly, maybe here there's like some pictures and some writing. You don't need to show the actual picture. You can just kind of put like a circle maybe and then a scribble, things like that. But the good thing is that you can kind of guess this is going to be really hard to write out nicely in plain English. It's really hard to say like this is next to this, which is next to this, and like show all of that relative positioning and things like that. And similarly here, yeah, I think this is honestly, I don't know, it's like Swedish or some other language, but this was what was on the slides. And we're doing a similar thing where we're just kind of boxing things out to show where things go and what they're going to include. So you have some sort of menu here. This big X is meant to represent a picture, but you obviously don't need to draw out a picture for what that's going to be. And you can see how this is a little simpler then. And the pictures, like the views that I was showing here, are kind of one single page, but we don't have a good idea of what happens if, let's say, I click on this widget right here. So we're just showing static page, what we see. If you want to show more of a flow with interactions, then you could kind of show something like this, where you have arrows pointing to the screen that you're going to go to if you do something. So if I log in, then it's going to take me to a profile. And if I click search up here, then it's going to take me to show the results and so on. So this allows you to get the sense of the flow by sketching. And similarly, you can kind of have a flow that's going back to one another. So maybe you have a home page and there's a few different ways to get back to that home page from other pages. And it's not necessarily a linear sequential order. So you can also map that out in this sort of way. And I'm not going to like really go into techniques here. This is pretty, it's not meant to be like a science. You really just, it should be pretty intuitive. Like I want to draw out what my screen's going to look like. And I don't want to get too detailed here. but you don't really need drawing lessons or anything specific here. You're just sketching things out as you would do in other cases. So we can go beyond sketches though, and usually designers will, and take things to another level. So pen and pencil, or like pen and paper, whatever, that's kind of it's the simplest way of doing things and probably the least detailed way of doing things, but it's a good starting point. At some point though, you're gonna want more detail. So if I saw this as an engineer, then maybe I'm not going to have enough information probably to be able to successfully code it up, because I'm going to have a lot of questions like I guess just like how much spacing, how much padding should be in between the search bar and the avatar here, because designers are always kind of very specific about this stuff. What font is my text? What are the colors I'm using? Different things like that. So you're obviously still missing out on a lot of information that an engineer could need to implement this design. That's where some higher fidelity designs come in. Fidelity is basically saying what level of detail do you have? How close to the real product, the goal, is this sketch or is this mock? So at the lowest fidelity would be like the roughest of rough sketches. And then you can go into higher and higher fidelity and make your designs look closer and closer to what your real app would look like. And here are kind of like the 3 stages going into higher fidelity as you slowly refine your UI. So after sketching, a designer might create a wireframe. This is still low fidelity, but the difference is that we're taking our sketch and then creating a digital version of it where we can be a little bit more exact by using straight lines and correct kind of positioning and things like that, which it's a lot easier to do without needing rulers and all sorts of crap on paper. But this is still like going to be very sketch-like, so it's not going to look too different, just a lot neater and nicer because it's digital. After that, you could create a mock-up, and this shows the layout of everything, but it also has styling and visual design added in. So the questions about color, questions about font, different things like that can be answered once you move to this level. And then prototypes answers questions more around the interaction. So a prototype could be where you can actually kind of like click on certain fake buttons on this design, and it'll take you to another fake page. And you kind of get to pretend you're using the app, but you're using just like a fake dummy version of it. But the good thing is that we have a sense of the interactions now. So this is how these can kind of look. Let's say we start with Sketch here for some sort of like vacation planning app. And here we're just showing like, here are the big elements. They're meant to be for different things. And then you could take that and turn it into a wireframe by basically using some digital tool. So as you can see, the lines are so much straighter. We can be a little bit more exact about positioning and things like that once it's in this digital form. And this is the stage where I'm going to ask you to create your app at this sort of digital version of a sketch. And then a mock-up, you know, you can start seeing like there's color, there's font, there's more of that visual design aspect of it. And then here in the final one, you have some more like dummy data being introduced. Maybe if you click on something, it would take you to an actual page and show you those sorts of interactions. And there's trade-offs obviously between these different ones. So I want to ask you all first, what do you think is the benefit of starting out with these two? So sketching and wireframing, it's still ambiguous because we don't have a lot of specific design things, but what's the benefit of starting with sketching or wireframing, these basic ones here? You get the rough idea. And why would you want to start with the rough idea? It's faster to create, so it's a lot faster in terms of just the amount of time it takes to create a sketch. It's obviously a lot better versus using Photoshop, creating this like crazy thing. Let's see. Best to start with because easy to change things along the way. Easier to change around, Elijah said as well as Gerard. So that's a good one. And also Brian's kind of alluding to the same thing. You aren't putting too much effort into a possibly bad idea. So that's all good. That's at the beginning of our design process, we don't exactly know how things are going to look in the end. So there's a lot of back and forth that's going to happen, a lot of feedback, and you're going to refine your idea more and more. So there's going to be a lot of changes needed at the beginning. And making changes to sketches or like wireframes when you haven't really gotten too deep into things is a lot faster and easier, as a few of you said. So it kind of goes hand in hand with the ease of the process as well as the need for so many changes. And Jamie said a similar thing. It allows for change by being less defined. Same with Janice, Michael. Awesome. Yeah, so you're kind of more in that idea stage. What about on the other hand? What are benefits now of putting in that time and effort to create a more specific mock-up or prototype here? Any ideas? You can fine tune them. So once you have your basic layout and that sort of those high level decisions made, you kind of get to add more specifics in terms of color, font, whatever. You get an idea of how it'll feel to use it. So that's good. Kind of looking at a wireframe or a sketch, maybe it won't give you the full picture of what this app's really going to feel like. And the feel comes kind of from interaction. So swiping, tapping, clicking to go to different places. You don't really get that until you use a prototype, which allows you to do interactions. So imagine that you've created a prototype where you have a few different pages. You start on this kind of home page where you see a list. You click on one, like Experience Asia like a local, but you realize there's no button actually to go back to the home page after that. Maybe you just totally forgot about that, but you won't notice it until you really start interacting with it and trying to test those out. So you can solve bugs as well through this process. What else? Any other benefits here? Okay, Gerard, if two different pages or use the same elements. Yeah. Sorry, I have a cough. Okay. Yeah, so it's easier to start from something that's built rather than starting from scratch. That's true. So you can kind of work with what you have in terms of other views, which can make that easier. Yeah, just add some water. Yeah, okay. One other benefit I would say is from the engineer's perspective, the more fidelity, the kind of more specifics you have in your design, the easier it is for the engineer to then implement it. So there's less questions they need to ask in terms of how is this going to look in terms of the font, the color, other styling things that they do need to implement. So it's helpful for the engineer. I feel like the way that it works for when I do things, my designer, when I'm implementing a feature, is going to like show me a mock-up. So probably this side of things right here. Maybe first we would kind of brainstorm the sketch earlier on of how the basic flow would look. And then when he's ready, he'll show me this actual mock-up. And then it's not over then. So we'll kind of go back and forth. And I would give him feedback like, I don't think this is that easy to do. Can you make this a little, can you change like this thing? Like it's not easy to make one bigger and one smaller or something. And then we would kind of work back and forth and end up with a design basically. Okay, Gerard, so why is that useful for, or why does that benefit having a prototype or a mock-up, like a higher fidelity design? I see. Okay. Okay, so you're saying that, got it, got it, got it. Yeah, so that's true. A lot of times in different apps, you're going to see that they kind of, they want to have a consistent sort of design in many ways. No, it's fine. And similarly, like your explore page and the newsfeed page are going to have a similar design, maybe, let's say that. If you have mockups created, then you're basically allowing another feature to jump off from your mockup and very easily kind of build a new feature based on it. So you have some sort of work that's already done and it's higher fidelity. And this allows other people to then use that work and more quickly create their designs. So I could see the benefit there. It allows for easier work for other teams as well. Cool. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much what we talked about here. Let me see if I forgot anything. Nah, okay. So there are a lot of tools in the industry that designers will use when they're going through this process. If we're talking about wireframing, so that most basic digital form, there's something called balsamic, mockups. You see a lot of things with cues. I don't know why designers like that so much, but they think it's edgy, probably replacing the C with the Q. And then you have OmniGraffle. I haven't heard of that. PowerPoint, though, everybody's heard of. And that can be a way where everybody already knows how to use it. So it can be easier to do that. I mean, at the end of the day, all you're doing is kind of just creating shapes and putting shapes together and relative to each other. So MS Paint even is going to get you the same thing. OmniGraffle, yeah. And for mockups, there's going to be a little bit more intense software. So Sketch, some of you may have heard of, Photoshop, of course. And then prototyping, where you want to show those interactions. There's something called origami, and there's different tools there as well. For our project 3, I'm going to be requiring wireframes though. So it's going to be this side of things, first one. Have any of you heard of these or used any of these tools before? I'm just curious. Aside from PowerPoint, that doesn't count. Nice, Nikki. Oh, okay. You used Axior for your UX class. Okay, yeah, Photoshop for other reasons. I'm sure people have used it. Inkscape, I've heard the name. I don't really know much about it. Haven't used it. But I know there are, I'm sure those are all valid ways, valid tools. Yeah, cool. So they're pretty easy. I'm not going to teach you how to use any of these. They, apart from Photoshop, which is kind of notoriously pretty hard. In general, they're pretty straightforward. Oh, Ronak, you also used Axior. Okay. Inkscape's like Illustrator. Got it. Cool. Yeah. So I'm going to get into this, but I'm not going to require you to use a certain one over the other. Because depending on what you've used, some things could be easier. But, in general, you don't really need to be an expert at these tools in order to in order to create designs. The goal is just kind of creating these basic layouts. If you're applying to be a designer for a role, it will look good for sure though if you have experience with Sketch and Photoshop, which people do look for. These are probably the ones that require the most specific knowledge in terms of layering and different things you can do. So that could be a good thing to know. But yeah, don't really get lost in the tools here. We're focusing on the idea of designs, and you always have pen and paper, of course. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit more about designing. First of all, in project 3, in order to give us a good understanding of what you're envisioning for your project, and also force you guys to really think about how something can look, which can help you in terms of what's feasible and not in your plan, you're going to have to do wireframing. So I'm not going to accept pen and paper sketches. Those can be pretty messy to read. I don't want to have to rely on your drawing skills. So you're going to just use a digital tool to create your wireframes. You can use any of the ones I mentioned, or even other things you guys were talking about, Inkscape, things like that. It's up to you and what you agree on with your group. I was playing around with different options yesterday. I recommend Google Slides, honestly, just because it's really easy to share people with it. It's free. You already have an account with it. So there's just kind of the least setup involved there. A lot of the design tools, like Balsamiq, they require you to create an account. They only have free trials, so it's a little limited, things like that. This is for the proposal due Sunday, John. So I'm going to require you have 3 wireframes in your proposal. They don't need to be final. They don't need to be consistent, but I just want you thinking about what this is going to look like. And you'll see that in the group proposal template at the end. It's the very last requirement. Before that, just a few things about how to design. So some of you may have, while doing project 1 and project 2, you're just like, how do I make this not look like complete crap? And it's not easy to kind of have the design thinking as well as to implement it itself. So it takes time. One thing I would say is to get a good kind of design sense, just pay attention to popular apps that you're using every day. YouTube, TikTok, I don't know. A lot of them are made to be intuitive, and that's why they're so popular. So look at how they do interactions, where they're placing certain information, their account info, how they're showing you follow someone, things like that. And try to just copy them. So that's the first rule, copy other people that do it well. If you're interested and you want to know more, then I have added some links here about design principles. And you can kind of look through these articles on your own time if you have the interest, but I'm not going to really require it. They're related to things like hierarchy. So more important things should come above less important things, because we kind of, as humans, or I guess as humans in the US, we're trained to look up, down, and left to right. So that's kind of how we're conditioned to think about things. Proximity, so you want to put things that are similar in nature and function that are near each other. So let me think of an example here. You wouldn't want to kind of put let's say like we're talking about YouTube or something. So you would kind of want to put videos in one place and your account info in one place. So those are kind of near each other and separate from each other, which allows you to basically think, okay, if this thing is nearer to my videos, then it's something video related. If it's something near my account on my visual space, then it's going to be something related to account, and kind of group things according to that rule. And then there's a bunch of different like useful rules to think about when you're designing. One thing I like is just preventing errors whenever possible. So if we think about our tic-tac-toe app, you don't want to provide spaces where users can trip up and make errors in your code. So let's say they're logging in. You want to check if they're trying to log in with an empty string. So if they haven't typed anything into the input and they're trying to log in, that's going to screw up your UI and like maybe even your database if you try to save that as an empty string. So you want to have some logic in there which prevents them from even doing that in the first place. So as a designer, you want to think, what is the worst way my user can screw up with this interaction, which would affect our code, and make sure that you, even if it's not going to be a common thing, you don't allow that to happen. So maybe don't let the button, disable the button unless somebody's typed in something, or show an error on the input, like an error message if they try to click the button, things like that. And then there's, some other rules that I kind of think of are making the interaction as simple as possible. So the least amount of clicks to get to do something. I feel like I know a lot of websites where it just takes so long to get what I want. I have to go through so many pages. Like if you think about a lot of sports websites, like the NBA website or something, trying to find what you want can often take like a long time. You have to go through like page after page and like different options in order to find what you want. So make sure that you're thinking like for the important things I want to do on my website, how can I make it as simple as possible? AWS is probably the best example here. The fact that you need to do 5 clicks in order to just get to the same one thing that all of us need. It's such a pain. So they have bad design there, of course. Canvas, yeah, Canvas, a lot of times they do require a lot of clicks. I've noticed that as well. Oh, okay, for WebEx specifically. Yeah. Yeah, I've given up on the AWS stuff. I've tried favoriting every tab that's possible on my way to the final link, but none of them end up working. I have to keep starting from the beginning. Oh, getting the COVID message. Yeah, the health pledge thing. That's true. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know who's designing Canvas, but they have an uphill battle right now. Oh, there's a way around it. Be curious to know that. Oh, okay. Going to InStructure or an automation software. Yeah. Yeah. So always think about that. You don't want to create the next canvas. So make sure that you're trying to keep things simple. You also want consistency. So errors should look like errors all across your app, no matter where the error is happening. So if you're going to do a red box for your error, make sure that every error that you show in your app is in a red box. Don't have something else in just like plain white text or like plain white box. Try to make sure that you have that consistency so users know what to expect. Some other things, make sure you're like only putting information that you really need on each page. So again, I'm going to go back to like a lot of sports websites, they just put so much info at once on the page. It can be really overwhelming. You want to really parse it down and kind of show options where users can click on things that they want and then see the info they need, rather than just kind of vomiting like a bunch of info, everything that you could possibly tell them on one page. So that's going to take a lot of cognitive load and it can like stress users out basically. And then you want to be as explicit as possible. So whenever you're displaying info, things like that, you want to kind of assume that the user is basically like a third grader, and be like, how can I make this as obvious as possible, what I'm doing? So if you have a login flow in your tic-tac-toe app, the button should be called login. It shouldn't be called like submit or join or something, because you're leaving confusion up. Like, what does submitting mean? Things like that. So just be as clear as possible throughout. And one final thing is kind of showing the internal status of a software. So let's say that you are following somebody on Instagram or subscribing to something on YouTube. when you click that follow button, it turns from follow into like following or subscribe into subscribed. And that's kind of confirming for you in your head that you successfully did this action. If it stayed as it was, just as a follow button, then I wouldn't really know like whether this worked or not. So I'd be a little confused. So you want to kind of give the user feedback on whether something worked out or not. That's kind of another thing. Okay. Automaton. Oh God. That takes me back. Yeah, I've noticed that, Nikki. The sign up button is like, it can sometimes be like impossible to find the login. I don't know why. I think they're like really trying to, maybe they're in the phase that they're really trying to just get new users, that they don't really care about existing users. But yeah, that's messed up. I hate when that happens. Okay, just because we're getting there on time, one final thing to mention here is, so I was saying Google Slides. I have a link in Canvas as well as on your template for the proposal to this toolkit. And this is basically just creating, it shows you like components. So like a button component or a menu or an input. And you can basically just like Legos, like do copy paste and plug and play and take these different components and combine them into your mockup design. So you don't need to know any new technologies. You don't need new accounts. You're simply just making slides that hopefully most of you are used to. So if you want to show an image, an avatar, a title, you're just taking it all together. And there's some examples here. On a phone app, you can see like a login page that you could create a wireframe for. On a desktop app, you could create, I did tic-tac-toe. I think I went a little too detailed, but you get the idea of how you could do something like that. So you'll be able to access this, and it has kind of steps on how you can do it. You can look at multiple screens, you can look at laptop, tablet, and kind of play around with that. So hopefully that helps and you can do this faster. Okay, project 3 stuff now. So I assigned you your industry mentors through your Canvas group homepage, and I'll show you how to get there in case you don't know. I just gave the name and the email. These are all Facebook employees just because logistically it was the easiest way to arrange this. But these are Facebook employees of very different backgrounds. So people are working on Instagram, WhatsApp, Oculus, Facebook, different products, first of all. Some people are engineers, some people are managers, so different roles. Some people are new grads, so like, you know, they've been in the industry a few years. Some have been there for like 10 years. So you'll also have different kind of experience based on who you get. So you should get, there's a good mix of people out there. There's some people that have worked at other companies, Amazon, Microsoft, MTV, all sorts of places. So even though it's Facebook now, they might have had experience already in the past. So hopefully that's still exciting, even if you're not that excited about Facebook itself as a company, which I think is quite fair. But yeah, I arranged those and I added that to your Canvas group page. You're going to be meeting with them every week, once a week. And basically what you're going to be doing is one person in your group each week is going to volunteer to be the PM, the product manager. And you're basically going to lead that meeting with an agenda of what you're going to talk about and go through the progress of how people are doing on your team in terms of completing the tasks you need for sprint 1 or sprint 2. For the first meeting, which is next week, you're not going to have actual tasks that you're working on yet because obviously we haven't started the actual coding part, but you're still going to choose a PM. The PM is going to have an agenda. This agenda is just going to be a little different. So you're going to introduce yourselves. You're going to go over your group proposal, which will be done by Sunday. You're going to talk about how you're splitting up the work generally. And then finally, you're going to have 5 minutes to kind of talk about feedback. So maybe the industry mentor has some ideas already about things that are feasible or not. So that's generally how this is going to look. And this is volunteer. So I'm not assigning who has to go first or second. You guys decide that based on your schedules and your interests. Okay, so we're gonna do group work now. You're gonna have about 20 minutes. Here are the things that I'm gonna want you to do. First, check Canvas and your group to see your group number. So it's gonna say group 1 through 10, one of them, or 1 through 9, I think. And based on that group number, you're gonna join the breakout room that kind of corresponds to your group. So that's how you're gonna join and meet the correct people. I want you to then introduce yourselves, say what you want, name, favorite TV show, just get to know each other. Create a group chat. So you can use whatever you want, Discord. The only thing I would say is don't use a group chat on our current Slack workspace because I don't want to go, that's going to make us go over our 10K limit. I mean, that'll get messy. So if you want to use Slack, make your own free Slack workspace and talk on there. If you want to use Discord, go for that, Messenger, whatever you want. And then once you create that group chat for communicating, you're going to basically communicate with your industry mentor to figure out when you want to meet each other. So you're going to create a when to meet, which is basically this website, whentomeet.com, where everybody can put in their times for when they're free, which days they're free and like at what times. So if I create an event here, one sec. If I create an event here, then each person can basically sign in and select the times that they're available. Be as lenient as you can with your times because these engineers have busy schedules and you want to make sure that you're giving them as many options. You can go all the way through midnight because people are working on Pacific time. So you can just give all the way through midnight, weekday, weekend, and then hopefully they can pick based on that. So fill out that when to meet, and then you're going to check who your IM is. You can look them up on LinkedIn and stuff if you're curious. And then you're finally going to want to, you're finally going to want to email them and CC me and your group members with this when to meet link and figure out what time basically you would want. So that's probably how much time you'll have for today. I'm not going to get further than that. Let me open the breakout rooms and you guys can join. Wait, sorry, one sec. Okay. Okay, so you should be able to go to breakout rooms with the menu. You'll see the list of possible rooms, and then based on your room number, hover over that room and it'll say join on the right, a join button, and you'll just click join. So go ahead and do that. Let me know if you need help figuring that out. Yeah, sorry. So the menu where you have like chat and the other options, you should see breakout rooms. If you don't see it, click more and it should be in more. Open breakout rooms and then find your correct number based on your group. Hover over that room name on the right and you'll see a button called join. This is in Zoom. Let me know if you can't find it. Should be able to, but people have different versions of Zoom. So for me, more is on the very right most of the menu, where it's like mute, chat, participants. Anand, do you see a button for breakout rooms or is that not showing? Okay, not for either of you. Okay, that's okay. Can you tell me what group number you are and I'll just manually throw you in there. Okay. Dominic is 6, Anand is 6. Okay, anybody else? Nikib, what group are you? I'll throw you in there. Group 3. Corel, group 3. Group 3? Really? Okay, there's a lot of people in group 3 for some reason. Okay, Corel is group 4. That makes more sense. Let me move you. No, that's okay. Kadeem, Netha, Mike, John. Mike, I can throw you in. What's your group number? Okay, I'll just manually add you. You should see the option to join. John Garcia, Natham, Kadeem. You guys there? Oh, I think, okay. Okay. I think everybody should be joining now. Hopefully you guys got the chance to meet with each other and kind of get logistically set up. So hopefully you have a group chat now where you can start talking more about everything and figure out your own meetings if you want to have them. And then I will look out for your email to the industry mentor by Friday at latest, but ideally before that, so they have more time to schedule it. Your proposal, yeah, so by the time you submit it Sunday night, make sure it's shared with me and the TAs. That'll be in the submission instructions. For now, it doesn't matter. As long as we can grade it, yeah. Cool. So over the week, you should do two things. One is kind of email the industry mentor based on the instructions and the specs. And then two, work on your proposal. So start brainstorming ideas with each other, floating them around, and maybe eventually vote on it or figure out, which way you want to go. And then hopefully this really shouldn't take more than 2-3 hours once you have your idea to actually write up the proposal over the weekend. And I'll expect that Sunday night. Other than that, make sure you finish the midterm in time. So it's due Tuesday midnight. So these are the three things on your plate this week: midterm, email, and proposal. And let me know if you have any other questions about that. I'll stay back for 10 minutes. Otherwise, everybody have a good week and I'll see you Thursday. All right. Bye, John. See you, Gerard. Bye, Kadeem. Bye, Natham. Bye, Joseph. Bye, Descartes. Bye, Venkat. See you all. Bye, Mohammed. Bye, Janice. Bye, Aman. Bye, Elijah. Okay. Bye, Karel. See you, John. Hey, Ronak, what's up?
Yo, what's going on?
Not much, not much. How about you? Ronak, you there?
Yeah, hi.
Sorry. Did you have a question or do you want to talk about something?
I do want to talk about something.
Yeah.
I I totally missed the first 30 minutes of class.
Oh, okay. I saw you joined in late.
Yeah, my bad.
That's okay. Yeah, it happens.